What lies beneath the Pyramids of Giza? Not inside them, beneath them. 30 meters below the Great Pyramid sits a chamber that was never finished. Or was it? Beneath the causeway of Khafra hides a shaft that descends through water to an underground island. Near the Sphinx, anomalies have been detected that no one can explain. And in 2025, researchers claim to have found a hidden city more than 2,000 feet below the surface. Some of these claims are proven. Some are controversial. Some may be nonsense. But one thing is certain. The Giza Plateau is not solid ground. It is riddled with tunnels, chambers, and secrets that have waited millennia to be revealed. Today, we descend into the darkness. Today, we discover what lies beneath. Chapter 1. The Secrets Buried in Sand. But before we begin, do not forget to subscribe. And if you truly enjoy these videos, please leave a like. Let us begin. The Giza Plateau, Egypt, a place where the ancient world still refuses to give up its dead. 3 pyramids stand against the African sky, monuments to pharaohs who ruled more than 4,500 years ago. Tourists arrive by the millions, cameras flash, guides recite familiar facts. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the Pyramid of Khafra, the smaller Pyramid of Menkaure, and of course, the Sphinx, that half-human, half-lion guardian crouching in the sand. But here's what the tourist brochures do not tell you, what the guides gloss over, what Egyptologists have debated in whispers for more than a century. There is another world beneath these monuments, a world of tunnels, shafts, chambers, and voids, a world that modern technology is only now beginning to reveal, a world that ancient writers described in detail, yet scholars dismissed as legend for hundreds of years, until the legend started proving true. March 22, 2025. A team of Italian researchers stands before a crowd of 1,000 delegates at a press conference in Cairo. They have news. Not the usual archaeological find, not another tomb of a minor official, not another fragment of pottery. They claim to have detected something unprecedented. Using satellite-based synthetic aperture radar technology combined with artificial intelligence, they say they have found evidence of massive underground structures beneath the Khafra pyramid. Not small chambers, not modest tunnels. They speak of 8 enormous cylindrical shafts descending deep into the earth. They speak of spiral pathways surrounding these shafts. They speak of a network extending more than 2,000 feet below the surface. They speak of a hidden city. The scientific community erupts. Some call it the discovery of the century. Others call it nonsense. Egyptologists, Zahi Hawass, the former minister of antiquities, who has spent his life studying these monuments, issues a blistering response. The Egyptian government distances itself from the claims. Radar specialists from American universities question whether any technology can penetrate that deep through solid rock. The debate rages. But here's the interesting part. This is not the first time someone has claimed to find hidden structures beneath Giza. It is not even the 10th time. For as long as humans have wondered about the pyramids, they have wondered what lies beneath them. And the strangest part of all is this. Some of those claims have turned out to be true. Let us start with what we know for certain. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is not simply a massive pile of limestone blocks. It contains chambers. It contains passages. It contains shafts that burrow through its interior like veins through a body. The ancient builders, whoever they were, did not simply stack stones. They created an internal architecture of stunning complexity. At the base of the pyramid, roughly 27 meters below ground level, carved directly into the bedrock of the Giza Plateau, sits the subterranean chamber. This is not a myth. This is not speculation. You can walk down there yourself, though the Egyptian authorities rarely allow it. The chamber measures approximately 14 meters by 8 meters. Its ceiling is rough limestone. Its floor is unfinished, churned into strange shapes that have puzzled researchers for generations. The traditional explanation goes something like this. The pharaoh Khufu originally planned to be buried deep in the bedrock, following the tradition of earlier pyramids. Workers began carving out a burial chamber beneath the monument. Then something changed. Perhaps Khufu changed his mind. Perhaps the architects developed a better plan. Whatever the reason, the subterranean chamber was abandoned. The workers stopped digging. The king decided to be buried higher up, in what we now call the king's chamber, deep within the pyramid itself. That is the official story. It is clean. It is logical. It fits the narrative of a straightforward tomb built for a single purpose. But look closer at that subterranean chamber, and the story starts to fray at the edges. The floor of the chamber is not simply unfinished. It is carved into deliberate shapes. Two mounds rise from the bedrock, separated by a trench. A deep pit has been cut into the eastern section. A narrow passage extends south from the chamber wall, running for about 16 meters before ending abruptly in a blank wall. Another shaft drops down from the floor, filled with rubble and debris. Here's what gets interesting. The Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt around 500 BC, more than 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. He wrote that Pharaoh Khufu was buried on an island surrounded by water in a chamber deep beneath the pyramid. For centuries, scholars dismissed this account. Herodotus was wrong, they said. He was repeating tourist guide stories. He never saw the actual burial and admitted as much. But then look at that subterranean chamber again. Two mounds, a trench between them, the possibility of water once filling that space. Some researchers now argue that Herodotus was describing exactly what he heard, and what he heard contained a kernel of truth. The chamber may have been designed to symbolize something far more complex than a simple abandoned construction project. It may have represented the Nile itself, the source of all Egyptian life, rendered in stone beneath the monument to eternal death. And that narrow passage extending south from the chamber wall, the one that ends in nothing, no one knows why it was cut. No one knows where it was supposed to lead. Some say the workers simply stopped when they realized the chamber was being abandoned. Others say there may be something beyond that blank wall, something never found. The subterranean chamber is just the beginning. Above it, inside the pyramid proper, other chambers wait. The Queen's Chamber, misnamed by early Arab explorers who assumed a smaller chamber must belong to a wife. The Grand Gallery, that soaring, corbelled passage rising at a steep angle through the heart of the monument. The King's Chamber, with its massive granite sarcophagus, empty since antiquity. The so-called air shafts, narrow channels extending outward from the chambers toward the exterior walls, their true purpose still debated. But what else hides inside those 2.3 million limestone blocks? What else waits in the darkness undetected for millennia? In 2016, a team of international researchers called Scan Pyramids made an announcement that would change our understanding of the Great Pyramid forever. Using a technology called muon tomography, which detects cosmic ray particles as they pass through solid structures, they discovered something massive, a void, an empty space roughly 30 meters long, located directly above the Grand Gallery. They called it the Big Void. This was not a small discovery. This was not a minor crack in the masonry. This was a space the size of a commercial airplane, hidden inside the world's most studied ancient monument, undetected until the second decade of the 21st century. The reaction was predictable. Excitement from some quarters, skepticism from others. Zahiwas dismissed the finding as meaningless, arguing that such voids are common in pyramid construction and represent nothing more than empty spaces left during the building process. Other researchers disagreed. They pointed out that the void is too large, too deliberately positioned, too aligned with the pyramid's internal architecture to be accidental. The debate continues to this day. What is the Big Void? Is it a hidden chamber? Perhaps the true burial place of Khufu, still waiting to be discovered? Is it a construction gap, an architectural necessity that served no ritual purpose? Is it something else entirely, something we do not yet have the conceptual framework to understand? And this is just the Great Pyramid. Walk a few hundred meters to the southwest, cross the stone causeway that once connected the temple complex, stop at an unremarkable spot in the pavement, a place tourists walk past every single day without a second glance. Here, hidden beneath the stones, lies the entrance to something extraordinary. They call it the Osiris Shaft. Named for the Egyptian god of the underworld, this vertical tunnel plunges through 3 distinct levels, each stranger than the last. The shaft was known in antiquity. Giovanni Biliglia, an Italian sea captain turned excavator, descended into its upper levels in the 1830s. But for decades, water filled the lower chambers, making full exploration impossible. Then, in 1999, Zahiwas led a team to pump out the water and investigate what lay at the bottom. What they found was remarkable. Nearly 30 meters below the surface of the plateau, cut into the living bedrock, a chamber unlike any other. A rectangular stone platform, surrounded by water on all sides, an island in the darkness, and on that island, an enormous granite sarcophagus. Herodotus had written about exactly this, an island, water, a sarcophagus. 2,500 years later, it turned out he was right. But what is the Osiris Shaft? Who built it? When? The artifacts found in its chambers date to roughly 500 BC, nearly 2,000 years after Khufu, yet the construction technique of the shaft itself suggests far greater antiquity. The precision of the cuts, the depth of the excavation, the sheer ambition of carving such a structure through solid rock using bronze tools. All of this points backward in time. Was the shaft built during the Old Kingdom when the pyramids themselves rose? Was it added later by devotees of Osiris, creating a symbolic tomb for the Lord of the Underworld? Did earlier, undiscovered chambers exist even deeper, now lost to groundwater and time? The answers are not forthcoming. The Egyptian government has restricted access to the shaft. Research has slowed. The water has risen again in recent years, reclaiming the lowest chamber. But the shaft is there. The sarcophagus is there. The mystery remains. And it is far from the only mystery beneath this plateau. In May of 2024, a team of Japanese and Egyptian researchers published findings that sent ripples through the archaeological community. Using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, they had surveyed an unexcavated area of the Western Cemetery, the ancient burial ground stretching west of the Great Pyramid. This cemetery contains hundreds of mastabas, the flat-roofed tomb structures that housed the bodies of nobles and officials. Most were excavated in the 20th century, but one section area, seemingly empty on the surface, had been left unexplored. The scans revealed something unexpected, an L-shaped structure approximately 10 meters by 15 meters, buried about 2 meters below the surface. Beneath that structure, a deeper anomaly, something highly resistive, possibly empty, extending down to a depth of 5 to 10 meters. The shallow structure appeared to have been deliberately filled with sand after construction, as if someone wanted to hide its entrance. What is it? The researchers do not know. They have called for excavation. They have suggested it may be an entrance to something larger, something that connected to the deeper anomaly below. The Egyptian authorities have not yet approved a dig. And so we return to the fundamental question that has haunted the Giza Plateau for 5,000 years. What lies beneath? The answer, it seems, depends on whom you ask. Mainstream Egyptologists maintain that the pyramids were tombs and nothing more, that any chambers or passages served buliary or construction purposes, that the mysteries have been largely solved, the questions answered, the debate settled. But then you have the anomalies, the big void that defies easy explanation, the Osiris shaft with its island sarcophagus, the unfinished subterranean chamber with its strange floor and dead-end passage, the L-shaped structure filled with sand, the March 2025 claims of a hidden city, dismissed by some but not definitively refuted. And beyond the physical evidence, you have the ancient accounts. Herodotus describing water-filled chambers, Strabo writing of labyrinthine passages, medieval Islamic legends insisting on underground tunnels connecting all three pyramids, the psychic Edgar Cayce predicting a hall of records beneath the Sphinx, supposedly containing the wisdom of Atlantis. Some of these sources are reliable, some are not. Separating fact from legend, genuine discovery from sensationalist claim has become increasingly difficult in an age when viral headlines spread faster than peer-reviewed research. What we can say with certainty is this: the Giza Plateau is not solid stone. It is riddled with natural fissures, ancient quarries, and man-made excavations. The water table sits only 20 to 30 meters below the surface, feeding into underground aquifers that have never been fully mapped. The builders of the pyramids were capable of engineering feats that still defy complete explanation. And despite more than 2 centuries of systematic archaeology, new discoveries continue to emerge. The pyramids keep their secrets well, but perhaps not forever. In the chapters that follow, we will descend into the darkness beneath Giza. We will explore the chambers that have been found and the chambers that remain hidden. We will examine the ancient texts and the modern technologies. We will separate what is known from what is claimed, what is possible from what is fantasy. The journey begins here, at the surface, where the sun beats down on limestone and tourists snap photographs. But the real story lies below, deep in the bedrock where water drips in the silence, where passages end in blank walls, where sarcophagi wait empty in chambers built by unknown hands for purposes we can only guess. What lies beneath the pyramids? Let us find out. Chapter 2. The Subterranean Chamber. Nobody finished. Deep beneath the Great Pyramid of Khufu, carved into the bedrock of the Giza Plateau, lies a room that has puzzled researchers for nearly 200 years. To reach it, you must descend through a narrow passage that slopes downward at an angle of roughly 26 degrees. The walls press close, the air grows thick. Electric lights installed in modern times cast harsh shadows on the limestone. After approximately 100 meters, the passage levels out and opens into darkness. You've arrived at the subterranean chamber. The first modern explorers to document this space was Giovanni Cavia, an Italian ship captain who had developed an obsession with the pyramids. In 1817, Cavia cleared the rubble that had blocked the descending passage for centuries and pushed through to the chamber below. What he found was not a treasure vault. It was not a gleaming tomb filled with gold and jewels. It was a rough-hewn cave, half-finished, abandoned in what appeared to be the middle of construction. The chamber measures approximately 14 meters from east to west and 8 meters from north to south. The ceiling is relatively flat, smooth in places, showing the marks of ancient tools. But the floor is something else entirely. The floor looks like a frozen sea. Mounds of uncut rock rise in some areas, deep trenches cut through others. A pit near the eastern wall drops into darkness, filled now with rubble from explorers who came before. The traditional explanation for this chamber is straightforward. When Pharaoh Khufu began construction of his pyramid around 2580 BC, his architects planned to follow the model of earlier royal burials. The king would be interred deep in the bedrock beneath the monument, safe from tomb robbers who might breach the upper structure. Workers began carving the subterranean chamber accordingly. They cut the descending passage from the north face of the pyramid. They excavated a large space in the rock below. Then something changed. Perhaps Khufu decided he wanted to be buried higher up, closer to the sky, closer to the gods. Perhaps his architects developed the revolutionary idea of building chambers within the pyramid itself, something never attempted on this scale before. Perhaps there were structural concerns about the stability of the underground site. Whatever the reason, the subterranean chamber was abandoned. Work stopped mid-carving. The workers moved upward to begin excavating what would become the Queen's Chamber and eventually the King's Chamber. This is a clean explanation. It fits the archaeological evidence as traditionally interpreted. It makes sense. But there are problems. The first problem is the floor itself. If the chamber was simply abandoned mid-construction, you would expect to see the kind of random mess that appears when workers walk away from a job. Piles of rubble, scattered tools, the marks of hasty departure. What you actually see in the subterranean chamber is something different. The uneven floor appears deliberate. The two mounds on the western side are roughly symmetrical. The trench between them is cut in a consistent pattern. The overall shape, if you look at it from above, resembles something. Some researchers have suggested it resembles the Nile Valley. Think about that for a moment. The ancient Egyptians built their entire civilization along the banks of a single river. The Nile was life itself. Its annual floods deposited the fertile soil that made agriculture possible. Its waters provided transportation and irrigation. Temples were built along its banks. The dead were buried to the west, where the sun set over the desert. The living dwelt to the east, where the sun rose over cultivated fields. What if the subterranean chamber was not unfinished, but completed exactly as intended? What if the strange floor was carved to represent the Egyptian world itself, with the two mounds symbolizing the eastern and western banks of the Nile, and the trench between them representing the river? What if this was not a failed burial chamber, but a ritual space, a symbolic recreation of the land of the living beneath the monument to eternal death? This theory remains controversial. Many Egyptologists dismiss it, but it gains support from an unexpected source, the Greek historian Herodotus. Herodotus visited Egypt around 450 BC, roughly 2,000 years after the Great Pyramid was built. He was shown the monuments by local guides, men whose ancestors had been telling stories about these structures for generations. Herodotus recorded what he was told, and what he was told is remarkable. According to Herodotus, Pharaoh Khufu was not buried in a chamber inside the pyramid. He was buried in a chamber beneath the pyramid, on an island surrounded by water. The water was brought through underground channels connected to the Nile. The king rested eternally in a symbolic river as his kingdom had rested along the real river above. For centuries, scholars dismissed this account. Herodotus never claimed to have seen the underground chamber himself. He admitted that the Egyptian priests refused to let him descend. He was repeating hearsay, tourist gossip, the exaggerated tales of guides seeking tips from gullible Greeks. But look again at that subterranean chamber. The two mounds, the trench, the pit near the eastern wall that might once have held water that even today shows signs of past flooding from the water table below. What if Herodotus was right? The chamber itself is not the only mystery. Extending south from the southern wall is a passage that appears to go nowhere. This corridor runs for approximately 16 meters straight into the bedrock before ending abruptly in a blank wall. Why was it cut? Where was it supposed to lead? Some researchers have speculated that workers intended to carve a second chamber beyond the first, perhaps a storage room for goods or a subsidiary burial for a queen. When the project was abandoned, so was this extension. The passage simply stops because the workers stopped. But others have raised a different possibility. What if the passage does not actually end? What if there is something beyond that blank wall, something that has never been breached? In 1992, a German robotics engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot into one of the narrow air shafts extending from the Queen's chamber. The robot, called Up after the Egyptian opener of the ways, crawled nearly 65 meters into the shaft before encountering a small door made of limestone, complete with 2 copper handles. The discovery caused a sensation. What lay behind the door? A hidden chamber? Treasure? The final resting place of Khufu himself? Subsequent expeditions drilled through the door and found another small chamber, and beyond it, another blocking stone. The mystery deepened rather than resolved. The shafts, originally thought to be simple ventilation channels, clearly served a more complex purpose, but what that purpose was remains unknown. Could something similar exist beyond the blank wall at the end of the subterranean passage? Could there be a sealed door, a hidden chamber, a continuation of the tunnel that has never been explored? The Egyptian authorities have not authorized drilling. Ground-penetrating radar has not been deployed in the chamber with sufficient resolution to answer the question. The mystery remains. And then, there is the pit. Near the eastern wall of the subterranean chamber, a square shaft drops down into darkness. The pit is roughly 4 meters deep, though the exact depth is difficult to determine because the bottom is filled with rubble and debris from nearly 2 centuries of exploration. In the 1830s, Colonel Howard Vyse, a British Army officer who had inherited Cavilia's obsession with the pyramids, ordered the pit cleared. His workers dug down through the debris, expecting to find something significant. They found more rock. Or did they? Some accounts from the period suggest that the pit was not fully excavated. The workers encountered groundwater and gave up. The fill at the bottom may conceal further depth, a passage extending into the earth, perhaps connecting to the aquifer that runs beneath the plateau. This is where speculation becomes dangerous. Once you admit the possibility that unexplored spaces exist beneath the subterranean chamber, the imagination runs wild. Underground rivers, lost labyrinths, chambers filled with treasure or knowledge. The myths multiply faster than the archaeology can keep up. But here is what we know for certain. The subterranean chamber exists. It is real. You can visit it if you can obtain permission from the Egyptian government, which is rarely granted. The floor is carved into strange shapes that have never been satisfactorily explained. A passage extends south and ends in a blank wall. A pit drops down and ends in rubble. No complete excavation has been conducted. No definitive answers have been provided. Mainstream Egyptology maintains that this chamber was simply abandoned during construction, that the floor is unfinished because the workers stopped carving, that the passage ends because the workers stopped digging, that the pit leads nowhere because there is nowhere to lead. This may be true. It is certainly the most parsimonious explanation. Occam's razor suggests we should not multiply mysteries without necessity, but there are 2 factors that complicate this neat conclusion. The first is the existence of the Osiris shaft, which we will explore in detail in the next chapter. This vertical tunnel, located not far from the Great Pyramid, descends through 3 levels to a chamber containing an island surrounded by water and a massive sarcophagus. This discovery, fully excavated only in 1999, proved that Herodotus was describing real structures when he spoke of underground chambers and water-filled burials. If he was right about that, what else might he have been right about? The second factor is the ongoing technological revolution in archaeological imaging. Ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, muon tomography, satellite-based synthetic aperture radar. These technologies are allowing researchers to see through stone in ways that would have seemed magical even 50 years ago. The big void discovered inside the Great Pyramid in 2016 was invisible until muon detectors revealed its presence. What other voids, passages, and chambers might exist, waiting for the right technology to detect them? The subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid has been known since 1817. In all that time, no complete archaeological investigation has answered the basic questions about its purpose. The floor remains unexplained. The passage remains unexcavated beyond its visible end. The pit remains partially filled with debris, and beneath it all, the water table rises and falls with the seasons, just as the Nile rose and fell above it when the pyramids were young. What secret does that water conceal? What lies at the end of the passage that appears to go nowhere? What would we find if we dug deeper into the pit, past the rubble, past the groundwater, into the bedrock that has sat undisturbed since the reign of Khufu himself? These questions remain open. They may remain open for decades more, depending on the decisions of the Egyptian government and the availability of funding for research. But the subterranean chamber waits. It has waited for 4,500 years. It can wait a while longer. The darkness down there is patient. And in that darkness, carved into shapes that no one fully understands, the floor of the chamber holds its secrets. Perhaps it represents the Nile, the river of a life beneath the house of the dead. Perhaps it represents something else entirely, some ritual or symbolic meaning lost to time. Perhaps it is simply unfinished, abandoned when the pharaoh changed his mind. We do not know, but we keep asking. And somewhere beneath the greatest monument of the ancient world, in a chamber cut from living rock by workers whose names we will never know, the answers wait. If only we knew how to read them. Chapter 3: The Osiris Shaft and the Water Beneath the Plateau. Walk south from the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Cross the ancient causeway that once connected the pharaoh's mortuary temple to the valley below. Stop at an unremarkable spot in the limestone pavement, a place where tourists pass by the thousands without ever knowing what lies beneath their feet. Here, hidden by a simple metal grate, begins one of the strangest journeys in Egyptian archaeology. They call it the Osiris Shaft, named for the god of the underworld, the lord of the dead, the ruler of the afterlife. And what you find at the bottom of this shaft reads like something from an ancient myth, because at the bottom of this shaft, nearly 30 meters below the surface of the plateau, lies an island. The shaft was known in antiquity. Medieval Arab writers mentioned underground passages at Giza. European explorers in the 18th and 19th centuries documented its upper levels. Giovanni Caviglia, the same Italian captain who explored the subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid, descended into the first level of the Osiris Shaft in the 1830s. Colonel Howard Weiss, continuing Caviglia's work, noted the shaft on his maps and assigned it a number. But none of these early explorers could reach the bottom. The reason was water. The Giza Plateau sits atop a limestone formation riddled with natural fissures and ancient quarries. Beneath this stone, an aquifer holds water that has accumulated over millennia. The water table fluctuates with the seasons and the flow of the Nile. In some years, it rises high enough to flood the lower chambers of underground structures. In other years, it recedes, leaving damp stone and crystalline deposits. When early explorers attempted to descend the Osiris Shaft, they encountered this water. The lowest chamber was flooded. Pumps of the era proved inadequate. The Egyptian archaeologist Salam Hassan, working at Giza in the 1930s, tried for 4 years to pump out the shaft. He failed. The water simply kept returning, fed by the aquifer below. The mystery deepened. What was down there? Why had the ancient Egyptians carved such an elaborate shaft if it was just going to flood? Was there something at the bottom worth finding? The answers would have to wait another 60 years. In 1999, Zahi Hawass, then Director General of the Giza Pyramids, assembled a team to finally excavate the Osiris Shaft to its lowest level. Modern pumping technology had improved. The water table had dropped in recent decades, partly due to changes in Nile management after the construction of the Aswan High Dam. For the first time in recorded history, a full scientific excavation of the shaft became possible. What Hawass and his team discovered would vindicate an ancient historian who had been dismissed as a fantasist for centuries. The Osiris Shaft descends through 3 distinct levels. The first level lies about 10 meters below the surface. Here, the shaft opens into a small chamber containing 6 carved niches, spaces cut into the rock for purposes that remain unclear. Pottery fragments and human bones were found at this level, dated through stylistic analysis to roughly 500 BC, nearly 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. This level appears to have been used during the late period of Egyptian history, long after the Old Kingdom that produced the great monuments above. But the shaft continues down. The second level lies at approximately 20 meters depth. Here, the excavators found a larger chamber with more niches. 2 massive granite sarcophagi occupied this level, empty but impressive. More pottery, more bones, more evidence of activity during the late period. The second level was clearly important to someone, enough to warrant the carving of heavy stone coffins and the transport of bodies down a narrow vertical shaft. But the shaft continues down. The third level lies at approximately 30 meters below the surface, and this is where the story becomes extraordinary. To reach the third level, the excavators had to pump out water that had accumulated for millennia. The pumps ran constantly. The water kept rising, fed by the aquifer. But eventually they succeeded, and what they found was unlike anything else at Giza. The third level is a rectangular chamber, roughly 9 meters by 9 meters, carved from solid bedrock. In the center of this chamber rises a stone platform, also carved from the bedrock, leaving a channel of water surrounding it on all sides. An island. And on that island sits a massive granite sarcophagus, weighing between 10 and 15 tons, empty but intact. An island surrounded by water, with a sarcophagus at its center. This is exactly what Herodotus described 2,500 years ago. The Greek historian wrote that Pharaoh Khufu was buried in a chamber beneath the pyramid, on an island surrounded by water brought through underground channels from the Nile. Scholars had dismissed this account for centuries. Herodotus was wrong, they said. He was repeating tall tales. He never saw what he described. But here it was, an underground island surrounded by water, with a stone coffin waiting for a body. Now, to be clear, the Osiris Shaft is not directly beneath the Great Pyramid. It is located near the causeway of the Pyramid of Khafra, several hundred meters from Khufu's monument. The sarcophagus does not contain the remains of Khufu. The chamber appears to date, at least in its current form, to the late period, long after the pyramid builders. But this raises more questions than it answers. Did the ancient Egyptians of the late period create this elaborate structure as a symbolic tomb for Osiris, inspired by older legends about underground burials at Giza? Or did they excavate and expand an older structure, one that dated back to the Pyramid Age itself? Zahi Hawass found hieroglyphic inscriptions in the chamber. One symbol carved into the floor spelled the word Per, meaning house. The Giza Plateau was known in ancient times as Pusir Neb Rastu, the house of Osiris, lord of Rastu. Rastu meant underground tunnels. The very name of the plateau acknowledged the existence of subterranean passages. Hawass concluded that the Osiris shaft was a symbolic tomb created during the late period as a place to worship Osiris as the ruler of the underworld. The island, the water, the sarcophagus, all of it served ritual purposes rather than actual burial. But not everyone agrees with this interpretation. Some researchers point out that the construction technique of the deepest chamber differs from late-period work. The precision of the cuts, the ambition of the design, the sheer difficulty of carving such a space 30 meters below ground all suggest greater antiquity. Could the core structure date to the Old Kingdom, with later Egyptians merely reusing and expanding it? And then there is the question of the water itself. The aquifer beneath Giza is not a modern phenomenon. It existed 4,500 years ago when the pyramids were built. The ancient engineers would have known about it. They would have encountered it when quarrying limestone. They would have understood how the water table rose and fell with the seasons. What if they incorporated this water into their designs deliberately? What if the Osiris shaft was meant to flood? In Egyptian mythology, Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, his body dismembered and scattered across Egypt. His wife, Isis, gathered the pieces and reassembled them, allowing Osiris to become the ruler of the underworld. The Nile was associated with this myth. The annual flooding of the river represented the resurrection of Osiris, the return of life to the land. An underground chamber that flooded naturally, creating an island around a sarcophagus, would have been a powerful symbol of this myth. The water would rise and fall with the seasons, just as Osiris died and was reborn. The chamber would have been a physical manifestation of eternal cycles, death and resurrection rendered in the stone and water. This is speculation. We cannot prove that the ancient builders intended such symbolism, but we can say that the Osiris shaft exists, that it contains an island surrounded by water, and that Herodotus described exactly this configuration 2,500 years ago. What else did he describe that we have not yet found? The Osiris shaft is not the only evidence of underground water systems at Giza. The entire plateau is riddled with wells, cisterns, and channels that have never been fully mapped. Some appear to date to the Old Kingdom, others were cut later. The relationships between these water features and the monuments above remain poorly understood. Recent research has suggested that the pyramid builders may have used water extensively in their construction methods. Channels feeding from the Nile could have transported stone blocks on barges right to the base of the pyramids. Hydraulic systems might have lifted heavy stones using the power of water. The entire site may have been designed as an integrated system of canals, channels, and reservoirs, most of which have long since dried up or been buried by sand. If this is true, then the underground world of Giza is far more complex than we have imagined. The shafts and tunnels we have found may be only a small fraction of what exists. Beneath the sand, beneath the limestone, beneath the monuments themselves, a network of waterways might extend across the entire plateau. But we do not know for certain. The Osiris shaft remains one of the few underground structures at Giza that has been fully excavated to its lowest level. Access to it is restricted. The water has risen again in recent years, partially reflooding the third level. Further research has been limited, and the questions multiply. The tunnel that Howe found extending from the west wall of the second level, a narrow passage cut by the ancient Egyptians, runs for about 6 meters before dead-ending in solid rock. Or does it? The excavators sent a boy through the tunnel. Because adults could not fit. He reported that it simply stopped. But was this the original terminus, or had the passage been blocked at some point? Similar tunnels extend from other chambers. Similar dead ends frustrate exploration. The pattern repeats throughout the underground world of Giza. Passages that appear to lead somewhere. Passages that stop abruptly. Walls that may be natural rock, or maybe deliberate seals. What lies beyond these blocked passages? We do not know. But we know that Herodotus was right about the island. We know that underground chambers exist at depths that early explorers could not reach. We know that water plays a role in these structures that we do not fully understand. And we know that the Osiris shaft, for all its strangeness, may not be unique. In 2008, a Belgian-Egyptian research team used ground-penetrating radar to survey the area around the Pyramid of Hawara, south of Giza. Hawara was built by Pharaoh Amenemhat of the 12th dynasty, roughly 400 years after the Great Pyramid. Near this pyramid, ancient writers described a labyrinth, a massive complex of chambers and passages that supposedly exceeded even the pyramids in grandeur. The radar detected something beneath the sand. The researchers found evidence of a large underground structure consistent with the ancient descriptions. The so-called Lost Labyrinth of Egypt might actually exist, but excavation has not been permitted. The water table in that area is high, the site is difficult to access, the mystery remains. And so it goes at Giza. Underground structures exist, ancient writers describe them, modern technology detects them, but full excavation remains rare, access remains restricted, answers remain elusive. The Osiris shaft proved that the ancients knew things we had forgotten. It proved that Herodotus was more reliable than scholars assumed. It proved that the underground world of Egypt holds secrets that have waited millennia to be revealed. What other secrets wait in the darkness? What other chambers lie beneath the monuments? What other islands float in underground pools, surrounded by water that rises and falls with rhythms older than history? The pharaoh Khufu built his pyramid to last forever. He succeeded, but the pyramid above ground is only half the story. Beneath it, beneath the plateau, beneath the sand and limestone, another world exists, a world of water and darkness, a world ruled by Osiris, a world we have only begun to explore. Chapter 4. The Big Void That Changed Everything. November 2nd, 2017, a date that will be remembered in the history of Egyptology, a date when modern physics reached into the heart of an ancient monument and revealed something that had been hidden for 4,500 years. The announcement came from an international team of researchers called Scan Pyramids. Their finding was published in Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. The headline seemed almost unbelievable. A void, a massive empty space hidden inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, invisible to the naked eye, undetectable by conventional exploration, revealed only through the magic of particle physics. They called it the Big Void. To understand how this discovery was made, you need to understand a technology that sounds like science fiction. Muon tomography, the detection of subatomic particles created when cosmic rays strike the upper atmosphere. These particles, called muons, rain down on Earth constantly. Millions of them pass through your body every day without you noticing. They are harmless, they are invisible, and they pass through solid matter almost as easily as light passes through glass. Almost. When muons travel through dense material, like stone, some of them are absorbed. The denser the material, the more muons get stopped. If you place a detector beneath the solid structure and count the muons arriving from different directions, you can create an image of the density above. Areas with more muons reaching the detector are less dense. Areas with fewer muons are more dense. In other words, myography lets you see through stone. The technique was first used at Giza in 1968 by the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Luis Alvarez. He placed detectors in the chamber beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, hoping to find hidden rooms. He found nothing unexpected. The pyramid appeared to be solid where he looked, but the technology has improved dramatically since then. Modern muon detectors are more sensitive. Modern analysis techniques are more sophisticated. And in 2015, the Scan Pyramids project began deploying these improved tools at the Great Pyramid. The project was a collaboration between Cairo University and the French HIP Institute, with support from Japanese institutions, including Nagoya University and KEK, the High Energy Accelerator Research Organization. 3 different teams used 3 different muon detection methods: nuclear emulsion films, scintillator hodoscopes, gas detectors. Each team worked independently. Each analyzed their data separately, and each team found the same thing. Above the Grand Gallery, that magnificent corbelled passage rising through the heart of the pyramid, there was an anomaly, a region where too many muons were getting through, a region that was less dense than the surrounding stone. A void. The dimensions were staggering, at least 30 meters long, perhaps longer, a cross-section similar to that of the Grand Gallery itself, roughly 8 meters high by 2 meters wide. A space the size of a commercial airplane hidden inside the most studied monument in the world, undetected until cosmic ray particles revealed its presence. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some researchers hailed the discovery as the most significant finding inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. No major internal structure had been found since 1837, when Howard Weiss discovered the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber. The Big Void was something genuinely new, genuinely unexpected,
genuinely mysterious. Others were more skeptical. Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of Antiquities, dismissed the finding almost immediately. The pyramids are full of gaps and spaces, he argued. This void is probably just empty space between blocks left during construction. It proves nothing. It means nothing. The announcement was premature and sensationalized. The truth, as often happens, lies somewhere in between. The void is real. 3 independent teams using 3 independent methods all detected it. The statistical significance is overwhelming. There is empty space inside the Great Pyramid in a location where no empty space was previously known to exist. But what is this space? Is it a hidden chamber? Perhaps the true burial place of Khufu, waiting to be opened after millennia of concealment? Is it a construction gap? An architectural feature with no ritual significance, simply the result of how the builders stacked their blocks? Is it something else entirely, something we do not have a conceptual framework to understand? The honest answer is that we do not know, and we may not know for a long time. The Scan Pyramids team has been careful to avoid speculation. They call it a void, not a chamber. They acknowledge that its exact shape and orientation remain uncertain. The muon data tells us that less dense material exists in that location. It does not tell us whether that space is a carefully constructed room or a rough gap between stones. It does not tell us whether it contains artifacts or empty air. It does not tell us how to reach it.
Some researchers have proposed theories about the void's purpose. Kate Spence, an Egyptologist at the University of Cambridge, suggested that the void might be a remnant of internal ramps used during construction. The builders may have created internal passages to move heavy blocks into place, then sealed or abandoned these passages when construction was complete. The void would be a construction feature, interesting for understanding how the pyramid was built, but not a deliberate chamber with ritual significance. Others have pointed out that the void appears to be deliberately positioned. It lies directly above the Grand Gallery, aligned with the pyramid's internal architecture. This positioning seems too precise to be accidental. If the builders wanted to leave empty space for construction purposes, why place it so carefully in relation to the known chambers? Japanese physicist Kunihiro Morishima, who led one of the detection teams, has emphasized that additional scanning is needed from different angles to determine the void's exact shape. Is it horizontal, like a corridor? Is it inclined, like the Grand Gallery below it? Is it a single space or multiple separate voids? The current data cannot answer these questions definitively. And then there is the question of access. The void appears to be sealed. There are no known passages leading to it. If it is a hidden chamber containing artifacts or remains, those contents have been sealed inside for more than 4,000 years. Opening such a space would require drilling through stone, potentially damaging the pyramid itself. The Egyptian government has been cautious about allowing invasive exploration. The pyramids are national treasures, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, symbols of Egyptian identity and pride. Drilling holes in search of unknown chambers carries risks. What if the drilling destabilizes the structure? What if it damages something irreplaceable? What if the void turns out to be empty after all? The debate continues. Meanwhile, the Scan Pyramids project has made other discoveries that received less attention but may prove equally significant. In 2016, before announcing the Big Void, the team detected another anomaly. This one was located behind the chevron structure on the pyramid's north face, just above the original entrance. The chevrons are massive limestone blocks arranged in an inverted V-shape, designed to distribute weight away from the passage below. Behind these chevrons, the muon data showed empty space. The team continued scanning. In 2019, they placed new detectors in the descending corridor and in a tunnel dug by Arab explorers in the 9th century. The data accumulated. The picture sharpened. In March of 2023, the team published their findings. The void behind the chevrons was not just a gap, it was a corridor, a deliberately constructed passage approximately 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 2 meters high. Using an endoscope, a tiny camera inserted through a small drill hole, the researchers captured images of the interior. The images showed a corridor with a gabled ceiling, following the angle of the chevrons above. The walls were roughly finished. The floor was clean. No artifacts were visible. The passage appeared to have been sealed since the pyramid was completed. What is this corridor for? Where does it lead? Some researchers suggest it was designed to relieve weight on the original entrance passage below. The descending corridor burrows through the pyramid at an angle, and the stones above it must bear enormous pressure. A void above the entrance would redistribute this load, preventing collapse. Others note that the corridor appears to continue beyond what the endoscope could see. The back wall of the visible space may not be the end. There may be more passage beyond. There may be a chamber. Zahi Hawass, despite his initial skepticism about the Big Void, expressed cautious interest in the corridor discovery. It could lead to something important, he acknowledged. It could lead to the real burial chamber of Khufu, if such a chamber exists apart from the known king's chamber. Or it could lead to nothing. Another construction feature, another dead end, another mystery that raises more questions than it answers. This is the frustrating reality of pyramid research in the 21st century. We have technologies that can see through stone. We have detected voids that no previous explorer knew existed. But seeing is not the same as understanding. Detection is not the same as excavation. The big void has been known for 8 years now. No one has entered it. No one knows what it contains. No one has proposed a plan for exploration that satisfies both scientific curiosity and preservation concerns. The corridor behind the chevrons has been imaged. We have photographs of its interior, but we do not know where it leads. We do not know if it connects to other passages. We do not know its purpose. And meanwhile, more anomalies keep appearing. In May 2024, Japanese and Egyptian researchers announced the detection of an L-shaped structure buried in the Western Cemetery near the Great Pyramid. Ground-penetrating radar in electrical resistivity tomography revealed a shallow structure filled with sand and a deeper anomaly beneath it. Another void, another mystery. The pattern repeats. We detect, we announce, we speculate, we wait. But the waiting cannot last forever. The technologies are improving. The pressure for answers is growing. The next generation of muon detectors will be more sensitive than anything used before. The next generation of imaging techniques will reveal finer details. Someday, someone will drill into the big void. Someday, cameras will show us what lies inside. Someday, the questions that began in 2017 will finally have answers. Until then, the void waits. It has waited for 4,500 years. It can wait a little longer, but not forever. The cosmic rays keep falling. The muons keep counting. The data keeps accumulating. Somewhere inside the greatest monument ever built by human hands, an empty space holds its secrets, and slowly, particle by particle, the truth emerges from the stone. Chapter 5. Herodotus and the Lost Labyrinth. 2,500 years ago, a Greek traveler arrived in Egypt. His name was Herodotus. He came from Halicarnassus, a city on the coast of what is now Turkey. He was curious. He asked questions. He wrote down what he learned, and the book he produced, called the Histories, became one of the foundational texts of Western civilization. Herodotus visited the Pyramids of Giza. He marveled at their size. He recorded the stories told by Egyptian priests and local guides, and he described things that scholars would dismiss as fantasy for more than 2,000 years. Underground chambers beneath the pyramids, water channels connecting to the Nile, an island where the pharaoh was buried, surrounded by a moat. We have already seen how the Osiris shaft vindicated part of this account. An underground island surrounded by water does exist at Giza. Herodotus was not simply making things up, but Herodotus described something else, something even more spectacular, something that, if it exists, would dwarf every other discovery in the history of Egyptian archaeology. He called it the Labyrinth. According to Herodotus, the labyrinth was located south of the Giza Plateau, near a place called the City of Crocodiles. It was built by 12 kings of Egypt working together, and it was more impressive than the pyramids themselves. His description is worth quoting at length, or rather paraphrasing in modern terms. The labyrinth had 12 roofed courts with gates facing each other, 6 facing north and 6 facing south, all enclosed within a single outer wall. Inside were 2 kinds of chambers, one set above ground and one set below, 3,000 in number, 1,500 of each kind. Herodotus claimed to have walked through the upper chambers himself. He described the passages winding through courts and colonnades, from apartments to galleries and back again, an endless complexity that filled him with wonder. But the underground chambers he was not permitted to see. The Egyptian priests told him that the lower chambers contained the tombs of the kings who built the labyrinth and the tombs of sacred crocodiles. They refused to let him descend. The underground levels were forbidden to outsiders. Herodotus was not the only ancient writer to describe this structure. Strabo, the Greek geographer who visited Egypt in the 1st century BC, also wrote about the labyrinth. He described hidden chambers before the entrances, long passages twisting and turning through one another, so complex that no stranger could find the way in or out without a guide. Diodorus Siculus, another Greek historian, called the labyrinth a work impossible to imitate in its ingenious design. Pliny the Elder, the Roman encyclopedist, described it as containing paths through its chambers so winding that they were impossible to negotiate, with fearful noise of thunder and passages that had to be traversed in darkness. These descriptions span 6 centuries, from Herodotus in the 5th century BC to Pliny in the 1st century AD. The writers generally agree on certain points.
The labyrinth was located near the entrance to the Fayum oasis. It was associated with a nearby pyramid. It contained multiple levels, with upper chambers that visitors could see and lower chambers that were restricted. Its complexity was legendary. But where is the labyrinth today? For centuries, scholars assumed it had been destroyed. Egypt had been conquered repeatedly. Greeks, Romans, Persians, Arabs, Ottomans, each wave of invaders had taken their toll on the ancient monuments. The labyrinth, if it ever existed, must have been dismantled for its stone, leaving no trace. This assumption began to change in the 19th century. In 1843, the Prussian Egyptologist Carl Richard Lepsius led an expedition to a site called Hawara, located south of the Giza Plateau, near the entrance to the Fayum oasis. At Hawara stood a pyramid built by the pharaoh Amenhotep III of the 12th dynasty, roughly 400 years after the Great Pyramid of Giza. South of this pyramid, Lepsius found the remains of brick structures. He proposed that these remains were the ruins of the labyrinth. The identification was controversial. The brick structures did not match the magnificent stone construction described by ancient writers. Some scholars suggested they were merely the remains of a town built atop the labyrinth foundations. The true structure, if it existed, lay beneath. In 1888, the British Egyptologist Flinders Petrie conducted his own excavation at Hawara. Petrie was methodical, rigorous, one of the founders of modern scientific archaeology. He examined the area south of the pyramid and found evidence of large-scale destruction. The site had been quarried, stripped of its dressed stone, reduced to foundations and rubble. But Petrie also found something else. Beneath the debris, he traced the outlines of a massive structure. His measurements suggested a building covering more than 60,000 square meters. This was
Not a small temple. This was a complex worthy of the ancient descriptions. Petrie proposed a reconstruction based on his findings in the accounts of Herodotus and Strabo. He suggested that the labyrinth had consisted of numerous columned halls arranged around an inner core surrounded by a colonnade. The upper chambers had been demolished, their stone taken for other buildings, but the lower chambers cut into the bedrock might still exist. The lower chambers, the forbidden levels, the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles. The excavation was incomplete. Petrie ran out of time and resources. The site was difficult to work. The water table was high, flooding the lower levels. Sound familiar? The full extent of the labyrinth was never determined. Its underground chambers were never explored. Fast forward to 2008. A joint Belgian-Egyptian research team arrived at Hawar with modern technology. Ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, the same tools that would later be used at Giza to detect the big void in the L-shaped structure in the Western Cemetery. The team surveyed the area south of the Pyramid of Amenemhat, the evidence of the labyrinth. They found it beneath the sand. The radar detected the outlines of a large underground structure, multiple chambers arranged in a grid pattern, walls extending deep into the bedrock, a complex that matched the ancient descriptions in scale and layout. The lost labyrinth of Egypt appeared to be real. The team published their findings in the Journal of the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics. They called for excavation. They suggested that one of the great mysteries of the ancient world might finally be solved. But excavation never came. The Egyptian government did not authorize a dig. The site is located in agricultural land. The water table remains high. The logistics are difficult. The political situation in Egypt during the years following 2008 was turbulent. The labyrinth remains buried. And so we are left with questions. Is the structure detected by radar really the labyrinth described by Herodotus? Or is it something else? A later construction built on the same site? Do the underground chambers actually exist? Or did the ancient quarrying destroy them along with the upper levels? What would we find if we dug? Empty rooms, flooded passages, the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles that Herodotus was forbidden to see? The labyrinth is not at Giza. It is more than 100 kilometers to the south, but its story connects to the broader mystery of underground Egypt. The pattern repeats. Ancient writers describe subterranean chambers, modern technology detects anomalies, excavation is delayed or prevented. The questions remain unanswered, and Herodotus keeps being proven right. He wrote about an underground island at Giza. The Osiris shaft confirmed it. He wrote about underground chambers beneath the pyramids. Modern scanning has detected voids and passages. He wrote about a labyrinth with 3,000 rooms, half above ground and half below. Ground-penetrating radar has found evidence of a large underground structure at exactly the location he specified. What else did he write that we have not yet verified? Herodotus described underground channels connecting the Giza monuments to the Nile. Modern researchers found evidence of ancient waterways leading to the plateau. Herodotus described the pyramids as part of a larger complex involving water management and underground construction.
For centuries, scholars cherry-picked his accounts, accepting the parts that fit their theories and dismissing the parts that seemed too fantastic. But the fantastic parts keep turning out to be true. Perhaps we should listen more. Centuries, scholars cherry-picked his accounts, accepting the parts that fit their theories and dismissing the parts that seemed too fantastic. But the fantastic parts keep turning out to be true. Perhaps we should listen more carefully. The lost labyrinth of here awaits beneath the sand, detected but unexcavated. Its upper chambers were destroyed long ago, but its lower chambers, if they exist, might preserve whatever was placed there more than 3,800 years ago. The tombs of kings, the tombs of sacred crocodiles, 3,000 rooms full of hieroglyphs and paintings, half above ground, half below. The above ground half is gone. The below ground half has never been found. Or has it? Somewhere beneath the farmland of the Fayum, beneath the water table, beneath millennia of silt and debris, the labyrinth may still exist. The chambers that Herodotus was forbidden to enter may still hold their secrets. All we have to do is dig. But digging requires permission. Permission requires political will. Political will requires money and stability and priorities. And so, the labyrinth waits. Like the big void in the Great Pyramid, like the passage behind the chevrons, like the L-shaped structure in the Western Cemetery, like the Osiris shaft, now partially reflooded, its lowest chamber once again submerged. The underground world of ancient Egypt does not give up its secrets easily, but it gives them up eventually. Herodotus wrote his account 2,500 years ago. We are still catching up. The island he described has been found. The labyrinth he described has been detected. What else waits to be discovered? What else did the ancient Egyptians build beneath the earth? What else have we forgotten? The answers are down there somewhere, in the darkness, in the water, in the stone. We just have to keep looking. Chapter 6. The Italian Controversy in the Hidden City Claims. March 22, 2025. Cairo, Egypt. A press conference unlike any other in the history of Egyptology. 1,000 delegates gathered in person. Thousands more watched the live stream on YouTube. The presenters were an Italian-Scottish research team led by Professor Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa, Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, explorer Armando May, and communications hand Nicole Ciccolo. Their claim was extraordinary. Using satellite-based synthetic aperture radar technology combined with artificial intelligence, they said they had detected a vast underground network beneath the Pyramid of Khafra at Giza. Not small chambers, not modest tunnels, a hidden city. The details were staggering. 8 massive cylindrical structures descending deep into the earth beneath the pyramid, spiral pathways surrounding each cylinder, winding down like corkscrews through the bedrock. 5 identical multi-level structures near the base of the pyramid, connected by geometric pathways, channels resembling pipelines for a water system, all of this extending more than 2,000 feet below the surface. 2,000 feet, more than 600 meters deeper than any known archaeological structure in Egypt, deeper than most researchers believed radar technology could penetrate through solid rock. The team suggested that the legendary Hall of Records, a purported library of ancient wisdom described by mystics and alternative historians, could lie within this underground complex. They showed images, they presented data, they called for excavation to confirm their findings. When we magnify the images in the future, they said, we will reveal that beneath it lies what can only be described as a true underground city. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of Antiquities, who has spent his career studying Giza, issued a blistering statement. The claims were nonsense. He said the technology could not do what the researchers claimed.
The Egyptian government had not authorized their work. Their findings were not peer-reviewed. Their methods were not validated. Other experts piled on. Professor Lawrence Connors, a ground-penetrating radar specialist from the University of Denver, questioned whether any radar technology could penetrate to such extreme depths through the dense rock and sand of the Giza Plateau. Current ground-penetrating radar works well for shallow features, he noted, but its effectiveness diminishes significantly beyond a few meters in solid geological formations. 2,000 feet was far beyond any proven capability. The scientific community demanded peer review. Where was the published paper? Where was the methodology? Where was the data that other researchers could examine and replicate? The team had announced their findings through a press conference and a YouTube live stream, not through academic channels. No peer-reviewed paper had been submitted. No independent verification had been conducted. The claims were extraordinary, but the evidence was thin. And yet, this was not the first time the team had made such announcements. In October 2022, Beyond and Malanga had published research in the journal Remote Sensing,
claiming to have found evidence of new structures inside the Pyramid of Khafre using similar satellite imaging methods. That paper had been peer-reviewed and published. It suggested that their techniques had some validity, but critics noted problems with even the earlier work. The tomographic images presented in the 2022 paper did not match known structures within the Great Pyramid. The researchers appeared to be highlighting arbitrary areas in their data, possibly interpreting patterns in noise as meaningful structures. The results had not been reproduced by other researchers. The 2025 claims went much further than the earlier work. They described structures of unprecedented scale, at depths previously thought unreachable. They suggested a rewriting of Egyptian history. They promised to reveal secrets hidden for thousands of years. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The evidence provided did not meet that standard. But here is where the story becomes complicated. The Italian team used a technique they called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. This is not the same as conventional ground-penetrating radar. Synthetic aperture radar operates from satellites, using radio waves to image the Earth's surface and subsurface by analyzing Doppler shifts in the radar echoes caused by tiny vibrations and movements in the material. The researchers claim to be able to infer internal structures. The technique is used in other fields: volcano monitoring, nuclear site inspection, structural analysis of large buildings. It has legitimate scientific applications, but applying it to detect chambers 2,000 feet below the Giza Plateau pushes the technology far beyond its demonstrated capabilities. The rock is dense, the sand absorbs energy, the depths involved are extreme. No previous study has shown that satellite-based research. No excavation has been authorized, but the controversy has not died. In June 2025, media reports emerged claiming that the team had detected a second hidden city beneath Giza. More structures, more chambers, more extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence. The pattern is familiar: sensational announcements, media coverage, scientific pushback, no resolution. And in the background, legitimate questions remain unanswered. Does something lie beneath the pyramids that we have not yet found? Almost certainly yes. The big void discovered by scanned pyramids proves that unknown spaces exist within the monuments. The Osiris shaft proves that elaborate underground research. No excavation has been authorized, but the controversy has not died. In June 2025, media reports emerged claiming that the team had detected a second hidden city beneath Giza. More structures, more chambers, more extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence. The pattern is familiar: sensational announcements, media coverage, scientific pushback, no resolution. And in the background, legitimate questions remain unanswered. Does something lie beneath the pyramids that we have not yet found? Almost certainly yes. The big void discovered by scanned pyramids proves that unknown spaces exist within the monuments. The Osiris shaft proves that elaborate underground chambers were built at Giza. The L-shaped structure detected in the Western Cemetery proves that radar can find buried features that escaped earlier excavation. But does a vast underground city extend 2,000 feet below the Khafre Pyramid? The evidence does not support this claim. The technology described cannot reliably image structures at such depths. The findings have not been independently verified. The peer review process has not validated the methodology. This is the challenge of underground archaeology in the 21st century. Technology has given us new eyes to see beneath the surface, but those eyes can deceive us. Radar returns are ambiguous. AI can hallucinate patterns. Extraordinary claims can spread on social media faster than careful science can evaluate them. The Italian controversy illustrates both the promise and the peril of modern archaeological imaging. The promise is that we may indeed find things beneath Giza that have waited millennia to be discovered. The technology is improving. The methods are being refined. What was impossible yesterday may be possible tomorrow. The peril is that premature announcements, sensationalized claims, and inadequate methodology can discredit legitimate research and muddy the waters of genuine discovery. When every few years brings a new claim of hidden chambers and underground cities, each announced with fanfare and each failing to produce concrete evidence, the public becomes cynical. The real discoveries get lost in the noise. The Scanned Pyramids project spent years carefully collecting data before announcing the big void. They used multiple independent detection methods. They published in peer-reviewed journals. They acknowledged the limitations of their findings. They did not claim to know what the void contained or what its purpose was. The Italian team did the opposite. They announced extraordinary claims before peer review. They speculated about legendary lost libraries. They described structures that no other researcher has detected using any other method. Which approach will lead to genuine understanding? The answer seems obvious, but the sensational claims get the headlines. The careful science gets buried in academic journals. And the truth, whatever it may be, remains hidden beneath the sand. The Giza Plateau has been studied for more than 2 centuries. Every generation thinks it has finally solved the mysteries. Every generation is proven wrong by subsequent discoveries. Perhaps the Italian team has detected something real. Perhaps their technology works in ways that mainstream science has not yet validated. Perhaps there really is a hidden city beneath the pyramids, waiting to be found. Or perhaps they have interpreted noise as structure, wishful thinking as data, ambition as evidence. Time will tell. But until their claims are independently verified, until other researchers replicate their findings using validated methods, until peer review confirms their methodology, the hidden city remains exactly that, hidden, if it exists at all. The Giza Plateau has been studied for more than 2 centuries. Every generation thinks it has finally solved the mysteries. Every generation is proven wrong by subsequent discoveries. Perhaps the Italian team has detected something real. Perhaps their technology works in ways that mainstream science has not yet validated. Perhaps there really is a hidden city beneath the pyramids, waiting to be found. Or perhaps they have interpreted noise as structure, wishful thinking as data, ambition as evidence. Time will tell. But until their claims are independently verified, until other researchers replicate their findings using validated methods, until peer review confirms their methodology, the hidden city remains exactly that, hidden, if it exists at all. The pyramids keep their secrets. They have kept them for centuries.
4,500 years. They will not give them up easily, no matter how sophisticated our technology becomes, and that perhaps is as it should be. The greatest monument of the ancient world deserves mysteries worthy of its grandeur, but it also deserves science worthy of its importance. Not press conferences, not YouTube live streams, not sensational claims without evidence. Science. Patient, careful, rigorous science. That is how we will learn what truly lies beneath the pyramids, if we have the patience to wait for it. End Chapter 7. Muons from Space, Revealing Ancient Secrets. 14 billion years ago, the universe was born in an explosion of unimaginable violence. Matter and energy burst forth from a single point, expanding outward in all directions. Stars formed, galaxies coalesced, heavy elements were forged in stellar cores and scattered across space by supernova explosions. Some of those stars still burn today, far beyond our solar system, far beyond our galaxy, in distant regions of the cosmos we can barely imagine. And some of those stars are dying violently, exploding with energies that dwarf anything on Earth. When they explode, they accelerate particles to speeds approaching the speed of light. These particles, called cosmic rays, stream through the universe in all directions. Some of them reach Earth. When a cosmic ray particle strikes the upper atmosphere, roughly 15 kilometers above the surface, it collides with atoms of nitrogen and oxygen. The collision produces a cascade of secondary particles, a shower of debris raining down through the atmosphere. Among these secondary particles are muons. A muon is like an electron, but heavier, about 200 times heavier. It carries a negative electrical charge. It moves at nearly the speed of light, and it lives for only about 2 microseconds before decaying into other particles. 2 microseconds sounds brief, but at nearly the speed of light, a muon can travel several kilometers, enough to reach the surface of the Earth, enough to pass through buildings, through mountains, through pyramids. Muons interact weakly with matter. They pass through most materials almost as if those materials were not there, but not quite. Some muons are absorbed. The denser the material, the more muons get stopped. This simple fact is the basis of muon tomography. If you place a detector beneath a solid structure, you can count the muons arriving from different directions. Regions where more muons arrive are less dense. Regions where fewer muons arrive are more dense. By accumulating data over time, you can build an image of the density variations above. You can see through stone. The technique was pioneered in the 1950s and 60s. In 1955, Australian physicist Eric George used muon detection to measure the overburden of rock above an underground tunnel. In 1968, American physicist Luis Alvarez, a Nobel Prize winner, applied the technique to the Pyramid of Khafra at Giza. Alvarez placed a muon detector in the chamber beneath the pyramid and counted muons arriving through the monument above. He was looking for hidden chambers. If a secret room existed within the pyramid, fewer muons would be absorbed along the path through that room. The detector would register an excess of muons from that direction. Alvarez found nothing. The pyramid appeared solid where he looked. No hidden chambers, no secret vaults. The muon data matched the known structure. But Alvarez had only looked at part of the pyramid. His detector was positioned in one location, viewing one section of the monument. Other sections remained unexplored. And the technology was primitive by modern standards. Detection efficiency was low. Data accumulation was slow. Statistical significance was limited. Half a century later, everything changed. The Scan Pyramids project, launched in 2015, brought 21st century muon detection to the Pyramids of Giza. 3 independent teams used 3 different technologies.
The first team, from Nagoya University in Japan, used nuclear emulsion films. These are sheets of photographic material sensitive to the passage of charged particles. When a muon passes through the film, it leaves a track that can be developed and analyzed. The films are passive detectors. They require no power, no electronics. They simply
Accumulate tracks over time. After exposure, the films are removed and scanned under microscopes. The tracks are counted and their directions determined. The second team, also from Japan, from the KEK High Energy Accelerator Research Organization, use scintillator hodoscopes. These are active electronic detectors. When a muon passes through a scintillator, it produces a tiny flash of light. Photodetectors register the flash. Electronics record the timing and position by stacking multiple layers of scintillators. The direction of each muon can be reconstructed. The third team, from the French Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission, used gas detectors positioned outside the pyramid. These detectors contain chambers filled with gas. When a muon passes through, it ionizes the gas, creating a trail of charged particles that can be detected electronically. 3 teams, 3 technologies, 3 independent datasets. All 3 found the same thing. Above the Grand Gallery, in a region where no chamber was previously known to exist, there was an anomaly. Too many muons were getting through. Something was less dense than it should be. The big void. The statistical significance was overwhelming. The probability of a false positive was negligible. 3 independent methods, analyzed by 3 independent teams, all pointed to the same conclusion. There is empty space inside the Great Pyramid, where no empty space was known to exist. The discovery was announced in November 2017 in the journal Nature. It made headlines around the world. For the first time since the 19th century, a major new internal structure had been found within the most famous monument on Earth. But finding is not the same as understanding. Muon tomography tells you about density. It does not tell you about shape. It does not tell you about contents. It does not tell you about purpose. The big void appears to be at least 30 meters long. It may be longer. Its cross-section appears similar to the Grand Gallery below it. But is it horizontal or inclined? Is it a single continuous space or multiple separate voids? Is it a deliberately constructed chamber or a gap left during construction? The muon data cannot answer these questions definitively. The resolution is limited. The viewing angles are constrained. More data from more positions would help refine the picture. But even then, muon tomography cannot reveal what is inside the void. For that, you would need to enter it, and entering it would require breaching the pyramid. The Scan Pyramids team continued their work after the Big Void announcement. They repositioned detectors. They accumulated more data. They focused on the anomaly detected behind the chevrons on the north face, above the original entrance. In March 2023, they published their findings on this smaller void. The muon data showed a corridor approximately 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, 2 meters high. The shape was more clearly defined than the big void. The position was more precisely located. Using this information, the Egyptian authorities authorized a minimally invasive exploration. A small hole was drilled through the stonework. An endoscope was inserted. A camera captured images of the interior. For the first time since the pyramid was sealed 4,500 years ago, human eyes looked into this space. The images showed a corridor with a gabled ceiling following the slope of the chevrons above. The walls were roughly finished limestone. The floor appeared clean, free of debris. No artifacts were visible. The passage appeared to continue beyond what the camera could see, ending at what might be a wall or might be a turn. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. Where does the corridor lead? What is its purpose? Does it connect to other passages? Does it lead to a chamber? The endoscope could only see so far. The drill hole was small. Full exploration would require enlarging the opening or drilling additional holes. The Egyptian authorities have been cautious about further invasive measures, and so the mystery remains. Muon tomography has proven its value. It found the big void. It characterized the north face corridor. It demonstrated that unknown spaces exist within monuments that have been studied for centuries. But the technique has limitations. Muons rain down from above. They provide good imaging of structures that lie between the detector and the sky, but they cannot easily image structures that lie beneath the detector. The subterranean chamber below the Great Pyramid, the Osiris shaft, the proposed tunnels extending deep into the bedrock, these are difficult or impossible to study with downward-looking muon detectors. Different geometries are possible. You can place detectors beside a structure rather than beneath it. You can look for muons that have passed horizontally through the material. The Scan Pyramids team positioned detectors outside the pyramid to obtain different viewing angles, but the technique becomes less effective as the path length through dense material increases.
Imaging structures 2,000 feet below the surface, as the Italian team claimed to have done, is beyond the capability of muon tomography as currently practiced. Muons lose energy as they pass through rock. At sufficient depths, too few muons survive the journey to provide useful data. Other imaging technologies complement muon detection. Ground-penetrating radar sends radio waves into the ground and analyzes the reflections. It works well for shallow structures, but loses effectiveness with depth. Electrical resistivity tomography measures how easily electric current flows through the ground, revealing variations that may indicate buried structures. Infrared thermography detects temperature differences on surfaces, which can indicate voids or passages behind walls. Each technology has strengths and weaknesses. Each provides a partial picture. Combining multiple methods gives the best results. The Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, infrared thermography, and three-dimensional modeling. The Japanese-Egyptian team that found the L-shaped structure in the Western Cemetery used ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography. Future projects will likely combine these and other techniques. The goal is to see without digging, to understand without destroying, to reveal secrets that have waited millennia without damaging the monuments that hold them. It is a delicate balance. The pyramids are irreplaceable. Every drill hole, every excavation, every intervention carries risk. The treasures they may contain must be weighed against the certain damage that exploration causes. Muon tomography offers a middle path. It is completely non-invasive. It damages nothing. It simply counts particles that were going to pass through the pyramid anyway. Cosmic rays created in stellar explosions billions of years ago, muons born in the upper atmosphere 15 kilometers overhead, particles that live for 2 microseconds and travel at nearly the speed of light. These messengers from the cosmos are teaching us about a monument built by human hands 4,500 years ago. The universe is revealing the secrets of the pharaohs. Particle by particle, muon, the picture emerges from the stone, and we watch in wonder as the ancient past becomes visible through the lens of modern physics. The pioneers who built the pyramids could not have imagined such technology. They worked with copper tools and human muscle and the unlimited labor of a god-king subjects, yet their creation endures, and now it begins to reveal its secrets. Our technology, born of sciences they never dreamed, now peers into the heart of their greatest achievement. What will we find? The muons keep falling, the detectors keep counting, the answers keep emerging slowly. Particle by particle, the truth comes to light. Chapter 8. The Hall of Records and the Mystics. In 1933, a man lay on a couch in Virginia Beach, Virginia. His eyes were closed. His breathing was slow and regular. He appeared to be asleep, but he was speaking. His name was Edgar Cayce. He called himself a psychic. His followers called him the sleeping prophet. And in that trance state, lying on that couch, he described things that no one else could see. He spoke of Atlantis, the legendary island civilization that supposedly sank beneath the waves 12,000 years ago. He said that refugees from Atlantis had fled to Egypt, bringing their advanced knowledge with them. They had built the Great Sphinx, they had constructed the pyramids, and they had hidden their wisdom in a secret repository beneath the Giza Plateau. He called it the Hall of Records. According to Cayce, the Hall of Records was a chamber located beneath the Sphinx, connected by a passage to the Great Pyramid. It contained records of Atlantean history, Atlantean science, Atlantean spirituality. It held the answers to questions that humanity had forgotten how to ask, and it would be discovered, Cayce predicted, in 1998. The prediction electrified certain communities, people who believed in lost civilizations, ancient wisdom, hidden knowledge, people who felt that mainstream archaeology was missing something important, people who wanted to believe that the past held secrets that could transform the future. 1998 came and went. The Hall of Records was not discovered. The passage beneath the Sphinx was not found. The Atlantean wisdom remained hidden, if it existed at all. But the idea did not die. The Hall of Records became one of the most persistent legends in alternative Egyptology. Books were written about it, documentaries were filmed, expeditions were organized to find it, and mainstream archaeologists rolled their eyes. Edgar Cayce was not a scientist. He was not a historian. He had no training in Egyptology. His pronouncements were made in trance states that cannot be verified or replicated. His claims about Atlantis contradicted everything known about geology, archaeology, and human history. The story of Atlantis itself comes from Plato, the Greek philosopher, who wrote about it in the 4th century BC. Most scholars believe Plato invented Atlantis as a literary device, a cautionary tale about the hubris of powerful civilizations. There is no archaeological evidence for a technologically advanced civilization existing 12,000 years ago, let alone one that sank beneath the Atlantic Ocean. And yet, the search for the Hall of Records led to real archaeological work at Giza. In 1978, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, an organization founded to promote Casey's teachings, cooperated with the SRI International in an effort to detect possible chambers in the bedrock beneath the Sphinx. They used ground-penetrating radar. They found anomalies near the paws of the Sphinx. They drilled test holes. They found only natural fissures in the rock. In 1991, geologist Robert Schoch conducted a geological survey of the Sphinx at the invitation of John Anthony West, an independent Egyptologist who believed the monument was much older than conventionally dated. Schoch argued that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure walls were caused by water, specifically by rainfall that had not occurred in Egypt for thousands of years before the conventional date of the Sphinx. His hypothesis, called the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, suggested that the Sphinx might be 7,000 years old or more, far predating the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty who supposedly built it. The hypothesis remains controversial. Most Egyptologists reject it. They argue that the erosion can be explained by other mechanisms, including salt weathering and the effects of the high water table. The geological evidence is ambiguous, but the controversy drew attention to the possibility that the Giza monuments might be older and more mysterious than mainstream archaeology acknowledged. In the 1990s, these threads came together. The search for the Hall of Records, the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, a growing public fascination with ancient mysteries fueled by best-selling books and television documentaries. Authors like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval proposed what they called the Orion correlation theory. They noted that the 3 pyramids of Giza, when viewed from above, appeared to match the 3 stars of Orion's belt. They suggested that the entire Giza complex was designed as a mirror of the heavens, aligned with the constellation as it appeared around 10,500 BC. This date, not coincidentally, matched Casey's timeline for the construction of the Sphinx and the Hall of Records by Atlantean refugees. The theories were speculative, the astronomical alignments were imprecise, the dates conflicted with all archaeological evidence, but the book sold millions of copies, the documentaries drew massive audiences, the public wanted to believe. And then came the Osiris Shaft. In 1999, the same year that Casey's prediction had specified, Zahi Hawass excavated the Osiris Shaft to its lowest level. He found an underground island surrounded by water with a massive sarcophagus at its center. This was not the Hall of Records. It was not connected to the Sphinx. It did not contain Atlantean wisdom, but it was an underground chamber at Giza that had been inaccessible for millennia. It was a discovery that seemed to validate the idea that hidden spaces existed beneath the plateau. The believers seized on it. See, they said, there are underground chambers. The ancient writers were right. Herodotus was right. Maybe Casey was right too. Mainstream archaeologists pushed back. The Osiris Shaft dated to the late period, they said, roughly 500 BC. It was not built by Atlantean refugees. It was not connected to any Hall of Records. It was a symbolic tomb for the god Osiris, constructed by Egyptians who lived 2,000 years after the pyramids. The debate continued. It continues still. What are we to make of the Hall of Records? On one hand, it is clearly a modern myth. Edgar Cayce invented it in the 20th century. There is no ancient Egyptian text that describes such a repository. There is no archaeological evidence for its existence. The predictions associated with it have failed to come true. On the other hand, the underlying intuition that secret chambers might exist beneath Giza has proven correct. The Osiris Shaft exists. The Big Void exists. The North Face Corridor exists. The L-shaped structure in the Western Cemetery exists. Underground anomalies keep being detected. The mystics ask the right question for the wrong reasons. Is there hidden knowledge beneath the pyramids? Probably not in Casey's imagined. Probably not Atlantean records inscribed in a lost language. Probably not spiritual wisdom that will transform humanity. But there may be chambers we have not yet found. There may be artifacts we have not yet recovered. There may be inscriptions we have not yet read. The pyramids were built to preserve their occupants for eternity. What else might they preserve? The subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid has never been fully excavated. The passage extending south from it has never been explored beyond its visible end. The pit in its floor has never been cleared to bedrock. The Big Void has never been entered. Its contents, if any, remain unknown. The corridor behind the chevrons continues beyond what the endoscope could see. Its terminus has not been reached. The Osiris Shaft has been partially reflooded in recent years. Its lowest chamber is once again difficult to access. The L-shaped structure in the Western Cemetery has not been excavated. Somewhere beneath the Giza Plateau, in chambers we have detected but not explored, in passages we suspect but cannot prove, secrets wait. Not Atlantean secrets, not mystical secrets, but historical secrets, archaeological secrets, the secrets of how the pyramids were built and why. The secrets of what the ancient Egyptians believed about death and eternity. The secrets of their kings and their gods. These secrets are worth finding. They're worth the careful, patient work of legitimate archaeology. They are worth the sophisticated technology of muon detection and ground-penetrating radar. They are not worth the fantasies of sleeping prophets and the sensationalism of alternative historians. The Hall of Records is a myth, but myths sometimes point toward truths. The myth that something lies hidden beneath Giza is proven true, even if the specifics of the myth are false. We should keep looking. We should keep scanning. We should keep asking questions. But we should ask those questions scientifically. We should seek answers through evidence and methodology. We should not confuse what we want to find with what is actually there. The pyramids are magnificent enough without inventing Atlantis. The truth of what lies beneath them is mysterious enough without adding mysticism. The real discoveries, when they come, will be more wondrous than any prophecy, because they will be real, and reality, in all its strangeness and complexity, is more fascinating than any dream. The Hall of Records does not exist, but something does, and someday we will find it, not because a psychic predicted it, but because science revealed it. That is how knowledge advances. That is how mysteries are solved. Patient work, careful observation, rigorous analysis. The pyramids have waited 4,500 years. They can wait a little longer for the truth. End.
Chapter 9. Tunnels of the Gods or Tunnels of Men. Here is the question that haunts every discussion of what lies beneath the pyramids. Who built these underground structures? The mainstream answer is straightforward. The ancient Egyptians built them. The same civilization that raised the pyramids, carved the Sphinx, and created one of the most remarkable cultures in human history. They had the knowledge, the organization, the labor force, and the motivation to construct elaborate underground chambers. The evidence supports this answer. The artifacts found in the Osiris shaft date to known periods of Egyptian history. The pottery is Egyptian. The sarcophagi are Egyptian. The hieroglyphic inscriptions use Egyptian language and symbols. The construction techniques match known Egyptian methods. Case closed. But there are anomalies that do not fit neatly into this picture. Questions that mainstream Egyptology prefers not to address. Details that suggest the underground world of Giza may be more complex than the simple narrative allows. Consider the subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid. According to the standard interpretation, this chamber was abandoned during construction when the pharaoh changed his burial plans. Work simply stopped, but the chamber shows no signs of hasty abandonment. The ceiling is finished, smooth, and level. The walls are cut cleanly. Only the floor remains rough, and even that roughness appears deliberate rather than random. The two mounds, the trench between them, the pit, the dead-end passage, all of this looks more like intentional design than incomplete work. Consider the Osiris shaft. The artifacts found there date to the late period, roughly 500 BC, but the construction of the shaft itself raises questions. The precision of the cuts, the depth of the excavation, the sheer ambition of carving such a structure through solid limestone. While other Egyptologists attribute the entire shaft to the late period, some researchers note that the construction technique of the deepest level differs from typical late-period work. The massive granite sarcophagus weighs between 10 and 15 tons. Moving such a weight down a narrow vertical shaft through water that has historically flooded the lower levels would have been extraordinarily difficult. Is it possible that the core structure of the Osiris shaft is older than the artifacts found within it? That later Egyptians reused and expanded an existing structure rather than building from scratch? This is speculation. We cannot prove it, but we cannot disprove it either. Consider the broader pattern of underground construction at Giza. The plateau is riddled with shafts, tunnels, quarries, and chambers. Some are well documented, others remain unexplored. The relationships between these features are poorly understood. Medieval Arab writers describe tunnels connecting the three major pyramids. Modern archaeology has found no evidence of such connections. But has anyone looked? Has anyone mapped the entire underground network with modern imaging technology? The answer is no. Partial surveys have been conducted, individual features have been explored, but a comprehensive underground map of the Giza Plateau does not exist. What would such a map reveal? We do not know. And then there is the question of water. The ancient Egyptians understood water. Their entire civilization depended on the Nile. They built irrigation systems, canals, reservoirs. They tracked the annual flood with precision. They organized their calendar around the river. At Giza, the water table lies only 20 to 30 meters below the surface. The aquifer feeds into underground chambers. The Osiris shaft floods naturally when the water rises. The subterranean chamber may have been designed to flood as well. Recent researchers suggested that water played a larger role in pyramid construction than previously thought.
In 2014, Dutch researchers demonstrated that wetting sand dramatically reduces friction, allowing heavy objects to be dragged more easily. Ancient Egyptian paintings show workers pouring water in front of sledges carrying heavy stones. In 2024, researchers from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, proposed that an ancient branch of the Nile once flowed much closer to the pyramids than it does today. They detected the traces of this now dry river channel using radar satellite imagery. The channel could have been used to transport massive stone blocks by boat directly to the construction site. And in 2025, French researchers published a hypothesis that a hydraulic lift system might have been used to raise stones within the pyramid. Water power, not just human muscle, could have played a role in construction. If water was so central to the building of the pyramids, might it also have been central to what lies beneath them? The Osiris shaft contains an island surrounded by water. Herodotus described Khufu buried on an island surrounded by water. The mythology of Osiris involves the Nile in the annual flood. Water and the underworld were linked in Egyptian thought. Perhaps the underground chambers at Giza were not just tombs. Perhaps they were ritual spaces designed to connect the dead with the waters of life. Perhaps the flooding was not a problem to be overcome, but a feature to be embraced. This interpretation remains
Speculative, but it opens questions that mainstream archaeology tends to close. And then there are the fringe theories. We have discussed the Italian team's claims of a hidden city 2,000 feet below the Khafra Pyramid. We have discussed the Hall of Records and the search for Atlantean wisdom. We have discussed the Orion correlation theory and the idea that the pyramids encode astronomical alignments from 10,500 BC. These theories are not supported by evidence. They contradict established science, the appeal to mystery rather than explanation. But they persist because mainstream archaeology has not fully explained the pyramids either. How exactly were the blocks lifted? We have theories, but no definitive proof. Why exactly was the subterranean chamber left unfinished? We have speculation, but no documentation. What exactly is the big void? We have detection, but no understanding. The gaps in our knowledge create space for alternative explanations. When mainstream science says we do not know, fringe theorists rush in with, we do know. It was Atlantis. It was aliens. It was lost technology. This is not helpful. Wild speculation is not better than honest uncertainty. But it is understandable. People want answers. When official sources cannot provide them, unofficial sources will. The solution is not to dismiss the questions, but to answer them, to conduct the research that will fill the gaps, to explore the chambers that remain sealed, to map the tunnels that remain unexplored, to use every tool of modern technology to understand what the ancients built and why. The underground world of Giza was built by humans. We can be confident of that. The evidence points consistently to Egyptian construction over a period of centuries. But which humans? When exactly? For what purposes? These questions are not fully answered. The subterranean chamber may have been begun during the reign of Khufu, around 2580 BC. The Osiris shaft may have been constructed or expanded during the late period, around 500 BC. The interval between these dates is more than 2,000 years. What happened during those 2,000 years? What was built and forgotten? What was destroyed and lost? What remains beneath the sand, waiting to be found? The tunnels of Giza are tunnels of men, but men who lived across millennia, men whose names we will never know, men whose purposes we can only guess. They left their work in the stone, the chambers and passages, the shafts and corridors, the empty sarcophagi and mysterious dead ends. They left their mysteries for us to solve, and we are still solving them, slowly, generation by generation, technology by technology. Each discovery raises new questions. Each answer leads to new mysteries. That is the nature of archaeology. That is the nature of the pyramids. The tunnels go deeper than we know. The secrets extend further than we have reached. And the truth, whatever it may be, lies somewhere in the darkness below. Tunnels of the gods. No, tunnels of men. Men who were mortal. Men who died. Men whose bodies have long since turned to dust. But men whose works endure. 4,500 years and counting. The tunnels remain. The questions remain. And we remain asking them, as we always have, as we always will, until the last chamber is opened, until the last passage is explored, until the pyramids finally give up their dead, if they ever do. Chapter 10. What still lies hidden. We have traveled deep beneath the Giza Plateau. We have descended through the subterranean chamber and wondered at its unfinished floor. We have followed the Osiris shaft to its island surrounded by water. We have peered through muon data at the big void hidden within the Great Pyramid. We have traced the lost labyrinth of Herodotus to its resting place beneath the sands of Hawara. Now we must ask,
Final question. What still lies hidden? The honest answer is that we do not know.
And that uncertainty is itself the most important finding of this investigation. After more than 2 centuries of systematic archaeology, after deploying ground-penetrating radar and muon tomography and satellite imaging and artificial intelligence, after excavating tombs and mapping temples and decoding hieroglyphics, we still do not fully understand what lies beneath the pyramids. We know that chambers exist. We have found some. We have detected others. We suspect more remain undiscovered. We know that tunnels exist. Some have been explored. Others end in blank walls that may or may not conceal further passages. Still others have been detected by technology but never entered. We know that water plays a role we do not fully understand. The aquifer beneath the plateau feeds into underground chambers. The ancient Egyptians incorporated water into their ritual spaces. The relationship between the monuments above and the water below remains mysterious. But what specifically might still be found? Let us consider the possibilities. The big void inside the Great Pyramid has never been entered. Its contents, if any, are unknown. The Scan Pyramids team detected it through muon tomography, but could not determine its exact shape or purpose. Is it a deliberately constructed chamber, perhaps containing artifacts or remains? Or is it a construction gap, empty by design, serving only structural purposes? We do not know. The Egyptian government has been cautious about authorizing invasive exploration. Any attempt to enter the void would require drilling through ancient stonework. The risks of damage must be weighed against the potential for discovery. But someday, someone will look inside. The technology exists. The curiosity exists. The question is when, not if. What will they find? Perhaps nothing. Empty stone and stale air. Perhaps something extraordinary, a second burial chamber, artifacts sealed since the reign of Khufu, inscriptions that answer questions we have asked for centuries. We will not know until we look. The corridor behind the chevrons on the north face has been imaged with an endoscope. We have seen its gabled ceiling and rough-hewn walls, but the camera could not see to the end of the passage. Something lies beyond. A wall, a turn, another chamber. What is it? Zahi Hawass has speculated that this corridor could lead to the true burial chamber of Khufu. The king's chamber, he suggests, may have been a decoy intended to distract tomb robbers while the real burial lay hidden elsewhere. This is speculation. We have no evidence that another chamber exists, but we have no evidence that it does not exist either. The passage awaits exploration. The L-shaped structure detected in the Western Cemetery has not been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar revealed its outline in 2024, a shallow structure filled with sand, a deeper anomaly beneath. What is it? The researchers who found it have called for excavation. They believe it may be an entrance to something larger, a tomb, a passage, a chamber connected to the deeper anomaly below. The Egyptian authorities have not yet authorized a dig. The structure waits beneath the sand as it has waited for millennia. Someday, shovels will break ground. Someday, we will see what the radar detected. What will we find? The Osiris shaft has been partially reflooded in recent years. The water table has risen. The lowest chamber, with its island and sarcophagus, is once again difficult to access. But the shaft holds secrets that were never fully investigated. The tunnel, extending from the west wall of the second level, runs for about 6 meters before ending. Or does it? The passage was explored by sending a small boy through because adults could not fit. He reported a dead end, but was the passage fully examined? Could there be a sealed door, a blocked continuation? Similar questions apply to passages throughout the underground world of Giza. Dead ends that may not be dead, walls that may conceal openings, rubble that may hide tunnels. How much has been explored? How much remains beyond Giza itself? The lost labyrinth of Hawara awaits to be excavated. Ground-penetrating radar detected a large underground structure in 2008. The site matches the location described by Herodotus. The scale matches his account of 3,000 chambers, but no excavation has been permitted. The site lies in agricultural land. The water table is high. The political and logistical challenges are significant. If the labyrinth were excavated, what would we find? Herodotus said half the chambers were above ground and half below. The above-ground portion was destroyed long ago, quarried for its stone, but the underground portion cut into bedrock might survive. 3,000 years of silence, 1,500 chambers waiting in the darkness, tombs of kings, tombs of sacred crocodiles, hieroglyphs and paintings that no human eye has seen since antiquity. This is speculation. The underground chambers may be flooded, they may have collapsed, they may contain nothing but empty stone, but they may contain wonders we will not know until we dig. And then there are the unknowns we cannot even imagine. Every major discovery in Egyptian archaeology has been a surprise. Howard Carter did not expect to find Tutankhamun's tomb intact. The Scan Pyramids team did not expect to find the Big Void. The Japanese Egyptian researchers did not expect to find the L-shaped structure. What else might be found that no one is looking for? The Giza Plateau covers a vast area. The pyramids and their associated temples are only the most visible features. Beneath the sand, beneath the tourist paths, beneath the structures we have studied for centuries, other structures may exist. Private tombs never excavated, underground quarries never mapped, ritual spaces never documented, passages connecting features we thought were separate. The plateau has been inhabited for at least 5,000 years. Humans have built, destroyed, rebuilt, and forgotten. Each generation has left traces. Most of those traces are buried. What lies beneath? We're only beginning to find out. The technology continues to improve. More detectors become more sensitive. Radar penetrates deeper. Satellite imaging resolves finer details. Artificial intelligence identifies patterns that human eyes might miss. Each advancement opens new possibilities. Structures invisible to one generation become detectable to the next. Our grandchildren will have tools we cannot imagine. They will ask questions we have not thought to ask. They will find things we do not know are missing. The pyramids are patient. They have outlasted empires. They have survived invasions, earthquakes, tomb robbers, and tourists. They have watched human civilization rise from bronze tools to particle physics. They will outlast us too, and they will keep their secrets until we are ready to receive them. This is the final lesson of what lies beneath the pyramids. We are not finished. We are not close to finished. We are still at the beginning. Every answer raises new questions. Every discovery reveals new mysteries. Every chamber opened shows us how many chambers remain closed. The ancient Egyptians built for eternity. They succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. 4,500 years later, their works still stand. Their secrets still endure. And we still search in the darkness beneath the monuments, in the water that fills the shafts, in the stone that blocks the passages, in the voids that muons reveal. We search for understanding. We search for connection. We search
For the truth of who we are and where we came from. The pyramids do not care about our search. They are stone. They are silent. They simply exist. But we care. We need to know. We cannot rest while mysteries remain. That is what makes us human. And that is why generation after generation, we return to Giza. We bring our tools and our questions. We dig and we scan and we analyze. And slowly, incrementally, the secrets emerge. Not all of them, not even most of them, but some. Enough to keep us searching, enough to keep us wondering, enough to remind us that the past is not dead. It is not even past. It lives beneath our feet, waiting to be found. What lies beneath the pyramids? The dead? The divine? The dreams of a civilization that believed in eternity? And us, we are down there too, in a sense. Our curiosity, our science, our endless reaching toward understanding. The pyramids are mirrors. They reflect back what we bring to them. Bring ignorance, and you see only stone. Bring wonder, and you see infinity. The choice is ours. The search continues. If you have enjoyed this deep investigation into the mysteries beneath the pyramids, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes these detailed explorations possible. Tell me in the comments, what do you think lies hidden beneath Giza? The true burial chamber of Khufu? A network of tunnels connecting the monuments? Something we have not yet imagined? And which ancient site should we investigate next? The underground chambers of the Valley of the Kings? The flooded tunnels beneath the temples of Karnak? The mysterious shafts of Saqqara? These places are not just tourist attractions. They are time capsules, messages from the ancient world to the future. We are the future they were speaking to. Let us listen. Thank you for watching. The pyramids wait, the secrets wait, and we will keep searching until we find.